Well, hello, my fellow friends, my fellow neighbors, my fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to an all-new episode of the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight Series. To be precise, our next trolley stop is episode number 108. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager here at Empowered Publicity. Thank you so much for spending some time with us wherever you are and wherever you may be. It's hard to believe that the month of February is almost complete. And one thing that I'm really looking forward to of many is things continue to open. Our hearts are opening up, restrictions more so over time. Space will be opening up. And this leads us so perfectly into what it is that we're going to be sharing here this week on the program, which, by the way, of course, thank you to all of you for all your continued support of the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight Series, as well as for the children's authors and illustrators who are sharing their heartfelt messages, their inspiring stories across the country and around the world with children, parents, families, and educators. And most importantly, we thank you, as always, for taking the time to walk home the children of the world. Thank you for subscribing to Empowered Publicity's official YouTube channel as well. We really do appreciate it. There's times in our life, we as adults, we tend to take life way too seriously, right? We've got this laundry list of to-dos. We need to do this, this, and this. And it's very easy because we can get frustrated too when there's something in our life that we want from our heart, a heartfelt desire, a heartfelt wish, and it hasn't even happened yet. The same is true for our little ones as well. They want to be able to be at point Z, and there may be at point G on their path. And it's so important for all of us to be very compassionate with ourselves, to be patient with ourselves along the way, because it hasn't necessarily been the easiest for many of us over the course of this past year. But leave it to a brand new heartfelt children's book to help us see the way through. And I am so delighted that the team at Little Brown Books for Young Readers, some of our favorite neighbors who share some of the best children's books for little ones around the world, they have put together something very special with our newest neighbor, our featured guest, this week on the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight Series, the brand new release, The Magical Yet. It is now available. You can head on over to Amazon.com. You can also log on to the official website of Angela. You can head on over to Angela D. I probably should have even asked how I pronounce her last name, with the last name like Masiulionis. Some people say, John, can you just spell it phonetically for me? So Angela, for our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, can you pronounce our last name for us, if you could?
Absolutely. It's Angela DiTerlizzi.
DiTerlizzi. So AngelaDiTerlizzi.com. The great thing is that we're going to be providing the link to not only Angela's website in the description below, but also her official social media platforms on Facebook and Instagram, so you can continue the conversation. Of course, if you're on Amazon, by the way, you can leave a 5-star review for The Magical Yet. We're going to be sharing so much about this beautiful book and then some here on this week's Trolley Stop. So if this message is bringing hope and healing into your heart, love into your heart, and or the heart of your little one, or if you feel that it needs to be shared with someone in need, we encourage you to share episode number 108 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series and the message of The Magical Yet on your favorite social media platforms. Angela, we appreciate you joining us all the way from, where are you again joining us again, if I may ask? If you can let it listen.
I am in very snowy, cold Amherst, Massachusetts.
That's right. I know that you mentioned Chicago earlier in the conversation, but that is where you are. That is where you were born and raised. So we're sending some San Diego sunshine your way. I'm so glad that this message is being shared, especially right now. The Magical Yet. Now, when the team at Little Brown Books for Young Readers first shared the book with me, I kind of had I said, this seems a little interesting. Kind of perked my interest. And then, of course, one of the great things is that when you dive into a children's book and you're literally on the first or second page and you're like, aha, now I know why this book was brought to my attention. You've done some fantastic work over the past several years. This book, just the timing of it is so divine. Could you share with our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, on how this message came to be in your mind, in your heart, and why you felt that it needed to be shared with children?
Absolutely, John. The idea for the Magical Yet came to me at my daughter's basketball game. She was on a community basketball team. It was the very first time she had played, and it was the last game of the season. Her team, the Panthers, had lost every single game that season.
Oh my.
So as parents, we were standing on the sidelines just so hopeful that maybe this could be the final game that they could win, just for all of them to feel that feeling of having that winning score of their team. And my daughter got the ball and she threw the ball into the air. And as it went soaring in slow motion, I watched from the sidelines, she made a basket. I couldn't believe it. But in that moment, I realized she had just scored for the wrong team.
Oh boy.
It was painful. And so, of course, as a parent, the moment we got in the car, I just started that conversation of, honey, you're working hard. You've gotten better over the season. You're eventually, maybe not this season, but maybe next season, you will win a game. You just haven't won a game yet. And I heard that phrase and it kept echoing through my head, yet. And I realized that not only was it a message to her, but it was also a message and a reminder to myself. And I went home and I started thinking about the power and the magic of the word yet, and how hopeful and encouraging the word yet is. And I knew that I came away from that moment learning something about my daughter, learning something about myself, and also finding inspiration for a new book. And I went home and started writing.
I think that the best sorts of inspirations for anything in life, whether it be a book, whether it be, a dessert that you're making for supper time, whether it be just a new trade that you pick up, it happens organically. Right. It just seems that, just some of the greatest children's books that we've shared here over the past 2+ years in the Children's Book Spotlight series, it's this message that kind of comes out of nowhere. But again, it happens in perfect timing. Before we dive into the pages of your book, the message is still very apropos of the Magical Yet. Not only your book, but the word yet, because, things are obviously starting to be better than where they were, about a year ago. And we've been kind of like going like this a little bit there. We've been like riding the waves of the past 11 months, so to speak, as the result of COVID and the pandemic. So depending upon where our listeners and viewers may reside, schools may be open, they may be closed. Restaurants may be open, they may be closed. Or maybe there's that sweet spot like it is here in San Diego where it's outdoor dining is open, but it's not the full... Right. The full dining experience sort of yet. One of the really wonderful things that I love about your book, if I want to mention, I always want to mention like some of the great stuff right off the bat is that it's a calling card of my soul. I feel this is, there's times when like in life where like we coach ourselves, so to speak, like there, it's like self-soothing. It's going to be okay. Right. And I would tell myself if there was something challenging that I moved through that like, John, the best memories and moments of your life haven't happened yet. And I always do my part to remind that for other people as well, because some people have lost jobs, they've lost their homes, they've lost loved ones. Some people are going through that proverbial divine storm where it seems like, 65 things are working against the person and they're all happening at the same particular point in time. Could you take us through the process of putting this book together, sharing this important factoid is that normally books are created and thought of before they're actually released. So a lot of the books that have been released during the pandemic, not all of them, but many of them were in the works before the pandemic happened. How important has it been for you to be able to share this message over the course of these past several months, especially knowing that it really has that much of a deeper meaning?
Well, when I originally started writing the book, it was with the idea of growth mindset, right? Which is that we are not born knowing how to do so many things. We're not born being experts at things. We are born and we learn through our experiences and through practice and patience. And that's how we get better at something. So when the word yet was originally intended in the book, it was about learning new things and trying new things. But the timing of the book was such that yet became something very different. And especially for me to have the privilege of sharing the magic of yet with young children, when now it's about when can you see your friends, because you can't see them yet. You can't see your teachers yet. You can't take off your masks yet. You might not be able to see your grandparents yet. Forget riding a bike. I mean, we're trying to do all those things too. But now yet is the reminder that just we are beyond the place where we are right now. And for me, one of my favorite picture books was Lily's Plastic Purple Purse by Kevin Hankiss. And there is one line in that book that my daughter is now 13, by the way, and we still return to, which is, today was a difficult day and tomorrow will be better. And that is, in its just so perfectly worded line, the idea that things can improve, things can get better, tomorrow will be better, even if they aren't yet. And so for me, it's just I've been hearing such a phenomenal response from teachers and librarians and educators and children and parents that have just validated the fact that I'm feeling this depth of connection with people that I intended on one meaning and now has become something else, because I was working on this manuscript 3 years before COVID. So it's been very interesting that a book that's all about yet and possibility has now grown into another meaning.
It's interesting how you're sharing that, because as you were talking, the phrase that comes to mind is the magical yet turns into the magical yes. Because eventually in life, right, there's times we're perfecting our craft. And, for all of those children's authors and illustrators that are tuning in, you might be familiar with submitting the manuscripts or contacting publishing companies and getting, a bazillion rejection letters. And eventually you get that one who sees your heart, who sees the quality of your work. And that yet eventually turns to the right yes. Also, another thing that comes to mind, one of my favorite quotes is from the famous inspirational speaker, spiritual teacher, and multi-time New York Times bestselling author, Dr. Wayne Dyer. And he talks about how it's important to just be a better version of who you are each and every day. And, that we're always learning, we're always growing. I think another expression that comes to mind is that we're works of progress, or we're works of art, yet we're works in progress, so to speak. Talk to us about the power of children's books, if you could, because I think that, children's minds and hearts, they're developing. They're like sponges, right? And it's very easy with children being very impressionable at a very young age. All it takes is a teacher or a parent just to say something mildly out of line. Maybe they're going through some sort of a traumatic experience on there, and it can literally leave an imprint on a child. And one of the most important things that we share here, it's really one of the foundational messages of the Children's Book Spotlight series, is the fact that children's books provide so much healing. They speak to children in a way that maybe their parents kind of can't get through to them, or their grandparents or their teachers, because children's books are very loving. They're very non-judgmental. They're always there for children whenever they need it. Could you share with our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, about why you feel children's books are important in that particular aspect, and how that's been important to weave that into your work as you've been progressing in your own work as a children's author over the years?
Well, I'll start by saying that I didn't grow up in a house with a lot of books. I moved very often. I was a very reluctant reader. I had difficulty with listening and reading comprehension. So I loved books that had words and pictures in them. And as I got older and it became more about words and less about pictures, I lost interest. And so for me, I really didn't kind of rediscover a literary childhood until I was about 20 years old, when I met my now husband, author and illustrator Tony DiTerlizzi. And in rediscovering this missing literary childhood, I got to find my own connections to stories, whether they were stories that were humorous, stories that were sad and heartbreaking, stories that I then saw my daughter reading and sharing with her. So I feel like because I experienced all of these things as an adult, I got to sit in a different kind of seat to observe all of this again and really absorb it. So I will say an example of this would be Pam Zietlow Miller recently released a picture book called When You Are Brave. It starts off with a little girl in the backseat of a car, and she is driving to a new place that she is going to be living, where she has to make new friends and is attending a new school. When I started 6th grade, it was my 6th school. I had moved every single year, and I felt so alone and so different in that process. And now, discovering that picture book, I will speak at 47 years old, I saw myself in the pages and wished I could go back in time and bring that book with me and give it to myself as a 7-year-old moving yet again. And I think we talk about books being windows into other people's lives and books being mirrors of our own experiences. But to me, I also think of books as gifts. And for me, I like to create a gift that I am proud to share, that I take pride in, that I put work in, that I put thought in. And I am giving that gift to all of the readers who I am fortunate enough to be able to share it with.
Again, for those of you who are just tuning in, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, we're enjoying this wonderful and magical trolley stop, episode number 108 of the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight Series. Children's author Angela DiTerlizzi is joining us as our featured guest here on the program. We are sharing the message of a brand new children's book, The Magical Yet. And yes, thank you for your patience, because we haven't officially dove into the pages yet, but just remember the word yet. Of course, you can head on over to Amazon.com, leave a 5-star review if you feel guided to do so as well. You can purchase your copy of The Magical Yet via Angela's official website and stay connected with her via her social media platforms on Facebook and Instagram. We've included the links below as well too. Remember, if Amazon is your favorite online vehicle of choice, you can, of course, leave a 5-star review for The Magical Yet, as that is one of the many ways that you can support Angela and all of the amazing children's authors and illustrators that are doing such much needed work for the children right now in this brand new year of 2021. Before we dive into the pages of The Magical Yet, one of the things that we love here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series is it's very easy to see, or we would like to think, that when a children's author has been published several times around, I even mentioned this with Peter H. Reynolds, who we were talking about in the Empowered Publicity Green Room, that, you know, if you're a New York Times bestselling author, your book gets on the Wall Street Journal, I mean, like all those sorts of bells and whistles, that it's easy peasy, right? It's just like everything always works itself out. It's just, silver spoons, and we're not talking about the TV show with Ricky Schroeder and Alfonso Rivera, right? And that's not necessarily the case. So we have the human experience, Angela, right? So we all experience challenges and difficulties and obstacles and problems, so to speak. We always like to be able to provide not even just hope and comfort, but real life experience from the authors and illustrators that join us. Could you share with us some of the specific challenges and obstacles that you felt that you experienced when writing, when publishing, even when promoting The Magical Yet, and how you were able to move through those to get through to the other side?
Absolutely, John. I think it's ironic that a book called The Magical Yet, of course it would come up against so many challenges of its own. It took me about 10 drafts to write this manuscript. Originally it was called The Magic of Yet. And it was a completely different book. I know we'll be talking a little bit about The Magical Yet, which it became, but it was very, very different in its inception than when I got to through 10 drafts to write the book. You think the challenge is over when you have a finished manuscript as an author, but sometimes a book has a journey of its own far beyond what you know of. In the case of this book, it was originally being published with one publisher, which was not Little Brown. It was with Disney Publishing. There was a deal that happened where many books were sold to Little Brown Publishing. So in the process, I changed editors. Oh, my first editor, by the way, ended up having a beautiful baby, and so departed within the process. So I went through another editor. I changed publishing houses. I changed agents. And so I think I went through 2 publishers, 3 editors, and 2 agents, all within one picture book, which I have never, in the now almost 8 years and 10 books that I've written, had an experience similar to that at all. And so I think what's so interesting about a book that has to do with experiencing a journey is that this book had such an interesting and unique journey of its own.
When I first cracked open your book, one of my, being an 80s kid on my end of things, I go back a lot of the times I'll mention Full House references. So there was the episode where Michelle was learning to ride her bike and Joey was helping her. I'm not sure if you remember this episode. And so, he was holding on to Michelle so that, she wouldn't fall. And then she told him to let go and he did. And then she fell and then we're not going to give away the whole episode, but by the end of the episode, she learned how to ride. I want to share one of my favorite illustrations right off the bat before we, of course, dive further into the book. Right now, I really feel that we're experiencing this beautiful feeling. I've been talking to a couple of my friends and colleagues about this. It feels like that there's something magical that's happening right now. And some of the puzzle pieces are starting to fall into where they need to fall in. And there's times in our life where you see something and you feel something before it fully happens, so to speak. And what comes to mind is the passage of your book, "Don't give up now. There is a major game changer, a most amazing thought rearranger." And I really feel like the phrase game changer actually comes to mind right now because, depending upon what a person's, beliefs are about, the current climate that we're in, I do envision that the summer and the fall is going to be that much more enriching and enjoyable. So things for children's authors like book festivals, book signings, just being able to interact with kids without wearing masks. I'm not necessarily against, having events right now at this particular point in time, but events with children's authors and children's books and kids, they're very intimate. They're very, I don't see this is one of the reasons why I, through Empowered Publicity, haven't done events yet, just because I don't really, it's just going to be such, when that yet happens, it's going to be that much more enriching. Take us inside the pages of The Magical Yet, as we always like to say, without giving away the whole kit and caboodle here on the Children's Book Spotlight series, and really how this message is shared in such a beautiful, lighthearted way. And I do also want to give credit to your illustrator, Lorena Alvarez, who did such an amazing job in creating illustrations that are very relatable to kids, that are very vibrant as well too, because again, I can just imagine being a kid myself and be like, all right, Mom, how come I can't, play with, my best friend, Mike, or how come I haven't seen my teacher, Mrs. Rudick, just quoting my 3rd grade teacher right now, right? And it's just when is this all going to happen? Then if I'm given a children's book that provides me with hope, that provides me with vibrancy, I'm going to have more faith and trust in the process that when this yet turns into the yes, it's going to be that much more magical. So could you take us inside the pages of the story for those who are learning about The Magical Yet for the first time on the Children's Book Spotlight series?
Sure. So the Magical Yet begins, actually, I've got a copy right here, on its cover with this child who we can tell is wearing a helmet and has the handles to a bike. Because when I thought about the idea of Yet and the thing that kids are so excited to do, but also can seem so impossible at the beginning of trying, was riding a bike. I wanted to really think about the journey and show the opportunity of what growth looks like through persistence and through determination. And again, referring back to the idea of growth mindset and learning something new and starting on a new journey. Originally, when I started writing this book, it was kind of the idea of Yet, and I used it in several different ways, and it wasn't as cohesive as it is now. And I actually showed it to my very good friend, Mo Willems, children's book author and illustrator of Elephant and Piggy and Knuffle Bunny. And he said, I love this idea, but what about this kid? Like, what if this kid's riding a bike? I don't want to lose sight of this kid. And it was like, as soon as that I heard that moment and that moment of feedback, everything clicked in. This wasn't about, it was about trying many things, but really we needed to follow the journey of our main character in learning how to ride a bike and showing practice and persistence and meeting other characters along the way who are also trying new things and having challenges of their own. And by the way, John, fun fact that you brought up Full House, I actually, in another life, when we talk about Yet, much earlier than my Yet of being an author, I was actually a makeup artist for about 15 years, working in film and television, and I used to do makeup for the Olsen twins.
See, again, like, that is something, honestly, I did not know. And this is just, it's amazing how things always manage to come full circle, so to speak. It's, that's... the whole.
Did you make up for John Stamos too? Uncle Jesse, we can't forget him.
Then there's a part of me that wants to ask, like, were you the person that did Stamos's hair? Because like that's like, we could just have another, like, we could have a full episode on just how Stamos's hair is just, and I'm comfortable in my masculinity to say that John Stamos had amazing hair, so to speak. And
he did.
The book itself, I think it's very relatable to kids no matter where they're at on their path right now. And I think because it's very easy for children right now. There's a lot of perceived divisiveness where it's a matter of, like, you know, everything that we've experienced over the course of the past year, whether it be between, you know, the election, Black Lives Matter, the pandemic. I mean, there's been other things that have been, you know, the recent storms in, you know, Texas and across the country. There's been different things that have taken us away from our center, that have taken us away from our core and our heart. And I really, one of the other things I really like about The Magical Yet, it really creates this feeling of comfort and being home. It's interesting because when I was taking a look at your biography in preparation of our conversation, you mentioned the fact that you're at home more and not on the road. And it's interesting how, like, my guidance was like interpreting that as, yes, you are at home, but you're also helping children to feel more at home within themselves. And I think that that's just such a good feeling. And I wanted to share that with you.
Okay, I feel horrible, but my computer actually dropped out through most of that. But I did catch the beginning about being home and that connection. And thank you so much for that, because as a reader, that is one of the things that I strive consistently for. In my books, is whether it is going to be through curiosity, through humor, through hope. I always want to welcome children into my stories with that sense of warmth and comfort and the invitation to explore something new or to dig deeper into something you're already passionate about. Because for me, especially with children, I think igniting a passion for either something, someone, a feeling, an emotion, and an experience, that to me is so, so important at its core, is to find a passion, because that gives us purpose. And so if I can create a connection to one's purpose in the pages of the books that I write, I mean, that to me is so gratifying.
One of my other favorite illustrations of the magical yet: be patient, yet can't do it all overnight. Some things take months, years to get right. Now, again, you know, one of the things that I've also learned along the way is it's because each person is going through something different. And sometimes people just want to be listened to. Some people just want to have space held in their heart. Someone just recently broke up with their fiance or lost their job. The last thing you want to do is kind of sound like Dr. Phil and kind of give them advice or whatnot. And sometimes they just want you to be there, just to have your heart open up and kind of like be like a Linus blanket for them, almost kind of thing. We always like to provide a little bit of additional useful, tangible information that our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors can extract and put into their daily lives right away. For those who are having some challenges right now, practicing patience, fully understanding the bigger picture of things, that maybe you're saying they may want to turn the word yet into a curse word of their choosing, so to speak, what would be some tips or some tools that you can provide, even some words of support and encouragement that you can share with those that are struggling with patience right now and are having a difficulty really remembering that the word yet really is magical and leads to even more magical things down the road?
Gosh, John, that's a great question. Every day since the first day of kindergarten, when my daughter has gone off to school, I've said the same thing to her. And I've said, be a good friend, be a good listener, and do your best. I've had to remind myself of that mantra as well. And the thing I've had to remind myself in that is that being a good friend piece means also being a good friend to yourself, showing yourself compassion and patience and love and kindness. All of the things that we ask for our children, we can practice as well for ourselves. And I think that we are always, I've heard a lot of adults that have connected with the magical yet. And I think that is because in its childhood picture book format, it's offering a reassurance that, you know, we can't do it all overnight, and that some things take days, months, or years to get right. And that's okay. However long it may take, it's okay. And so that's what I remind myself is just almost, I think about the things that we say to our children. And if we can say those same things to ourselves, I think there is something very key in that. And to encourage ourselves in the same way. And if we can have compassion for ourselves, we can then share that with our children.
It's everything really at the end of the day. Maybe this is just my 2 cents, but I do hope that some people at least, feel the same way. It's all an inside job. And I really believe that how we feel about ourselves, if we love ourselves, greater chance we're going to attract people in our lives that also love themselves. When you're kinder to yourself, you're going to attract more people that are kinder to themselves and kinder to other people. If you do your part to give freely from your heart, you're going to be receiving that much more as well too. And, you know, it does take some experience, right? Because, you know, many of us, we kind of came from old conditioning, old belief systems, old storylines, familial belief, whatever you want to classify that as, right? And a lot of what has happened over the past several years is really the unlearning of what it is that we're not, so that we could really be more of who we are. And it's so interesting because there's, you know, two things specifically that I feel are happening in my life right now, even though they haven't happened yet. One is, it's been about 10 years since I've had a dog. And I've been spending, like, I have a greater connection in my heart with dogs, especially right now. Just right outside my residence here in San Diego, there's always, you know, dogs that are walking around, and, you know, is there a nice little dog park there? And, you know, I'll always ask the owner what his or her name is. And I'll spend time talking to the dog, because I really believe dogs have souls. So I put out the intention for years of a little Shih Tzu Maltese named Little Forest coming into my life. And it's like, I put out the intention to the universe that said, I'm ready. I just, you know, but again, whenever that happens in the coming weeks, months ahead, that'll happen. I also feel that, you know, for many people over the course of the past several years, it's also been a journey of self-love, and it's been a journey of healing. There's a lot of single people that are out there that are saying, where's my husband? Where's my wife? Where's my boyfriend? Where's my girlfriend? Where's my life partner? Where's my main squeeze? Where's the one that completes me? And when you realize that you complete yourself, right, you're able to attract the things, the experiences, the people, the relationships that complement you. So, you know, I do envision that my partner is going to be coming in at some point soon. I don't know what her name is. Then again, maybe I do. I don't know. You know, what she looks like, things along the lines of this. But again, like, so I've had my own experience with saying, okay, when are these yets going to happen? Right. And I think even for like authors as well, too, and I've seen this in my 10-minute empowered publicity over the past 7 years, that, you know, some authors, it's like, you know, they're enjoying the experience of writing their first book or sharing their first book or writing several. And then it's automatically a matter of, well, when can I get to be on Oprah? Or when can I be on Ellen? Or when can I be on the Today Show? Or when can I be a New York Times bestselling author? And I always remind authors that, like, those experiences, they always happen in their perfect time. And it's interesting because, you know, as I'm talking about this, I hear the connection between yet and time. There's this beautiful song. I'm not sure if you've ever listened to the song Enya's, or by Enya, it's called Only Time. And it's just this beautiful ballad that just reminds us that everything happens exactly when it's meant to. And in fact, now is the perfect time. Now is the perfect time to check out The Magical Yet, by the way. You can head on over to Amazon.com. I just love how these things just all segue in perfectly. The Magical Yet, it is now available courtesy of our featured guest, Angela DiTerlizzi, and our friends and neighbors at Little Brown Books for Young Readers. You can head on over to Amazon.com, purchase your copy of The Magical Yet if you feel guided to leave a 5-star review as well for Angela. That is one of the many ways that you can support the wonderful work that she is doing for children, parents, families, educators across the country and around the world. You can also head on over to your favorite bookstore as well, too. You know, it's very interesting. Like, I find myself at a couple of the Barnes and Nobles here in San Diego, just some wonderful experiences. Special shout out to one of our mutual friends and neighbors, Matthew Cordell. We're going to be talking about him momentarily as well, too. I remember one of the greatest experiences is when I held Hello Neighbor for the first time in my hand. And then I actually went to the local Barnes and Noble, and this was back in Buffalo, and checked it out there as well, too. So however you purchase your copies of The Magical Yet, we encourage you to be able to do so in the process. What are some of the takeaways? You know, we've touched upon a few things in our trolley stop here together today. If you could really encapsulate things specifically for children, for parents, for educators, and I like to create this other super cool category called those who love great children's books. Because sometimes, you know, like it's like for the inner child within you, so to speak. What are some of the takeaways that you hope that everyone takes away from The Magical Yet as they're resetting and refreshing at the beginning of this new year?
I think something that I just hope that they take away from this book and from this time that we are sharing, is hope. Is hope that tomorrow can be brighter than today. Is that you can forgive tomorrow. In this moment, you can forgive and move forward in tomorrow. You can love harder moving forward from this moment. You're yet, although you might not have experienced it in the future, you can still, in this very moment, embody the things that you want to see in yourself, in your yet, in your tomorrow. I mean, you and I both have a great, great love for Fred Rogers. And, you know, I think because all of his words, his kindnesses, his mantras, his songs that he shared were a hopefulness, were an understanding of oneself and one another. And I think that's the thing that I always dream of, is that in our yet, that we can have a deeper understanding of ourselves and one another in the journey that it takes to get from yet to yes.
It's interesting that you mentioned this too, because we already talked about the inspiration that's behind me over here. There's another source of inspiration on the other side. There's actually two sources of inspiration. And bear with me, listeners and viewers, friends and neighbors, as I just turn around here. The one quote that I have, I feel like this is like, you know, like a little tutorial from Empowered Publicity, right? But over here, yonder here on this part of my office wall is a little quote by Winnie the Pooh. And it says, "Promise me you'll always remember you're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think." And I think that's an important, you have no idea the number of times I just look at this each and every day, because, you know, the human experience, right? And I think it's so important that we're reminding ourselves of those sorts of words as we're, you know, allowing ourselves to bring these new experiences and relationships into our lives. And then right above that, I'm not sure if it's a quote from The Wizard of Oz or if it's just paraphrased from the film, but you've got the Cowardly Lion, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and Dorothy and Little Toto, and they're looking at the Emerald City. They're starting off on the yellow brick road and wondering, how the heck are we going to get there? And it says, it's
right.
Not the destination, but the journey that matters most. And it's so interesting how that all blends together into the magical yet.
John, you know, when we think about the journey and I think about the Emerald City, and you talk about celebrities and the Today Show and New York Times bestsellers and all of these hopes and dreams that authors have the moment they start writing their first book. I kind of came at this from a different direction because when I was a makeup artist, I worked on the Today Show for several years. I worked on Saturday Night Live. I worked in film and television, and I worked with a lot of celebrities that I had the privilege of working with. And I knew, as rewarding as it was to be in kind of this glamorous experience of working in TV, what was truly fulfilling to me wasn't where I was at. It was the connections that I was having while I was there. And that, above all, was the thing that I took with me. And that is what picture books and writing allows me to do, is to share a connection. And I feel that if we can connect through a story to someone else's story, and we have a deeper understanding of others, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves, and we can be a better version of ourselves. And so when we get to the Emerald City and we find out it's not all we thought it was going to be, and that, you know, it was within us all along, we just had to find it through our journey. And then this is the
whenever that yet happens, you just have a deeper appreciation, right? You know, I give, you know, to all of our single neighbors out there, right? Eventually, when you are introduced to your partner, you're going to look back and say, wow, like I did all this self-love work. I did all this healing work. I did, you know, the meditations or the working out, and I did this to feel good about myself. And then whatever else was going to come as the result of that, it's just kind of like, you know, icing on the cake, so to speak. Before we talk about coming attractions, you mentioned Saturday Night Live, and it's just very, I'm just curious what time frame that you worked on Saturday Night Live, because even though I by far do not watch television in the capacity in which I did beforehand, I still find myself popping on YouTube and either watching, you know, a couple of old classic clips from SNL, or even, you know, some of the newer episodes that are still on now. What time frame? What was it? The Will Ferrell years of SNL? Was it after that? Was it Wayne's World years? I'm not sure how far back that we can date your SNL experience.
So it was the Will Ferrell years, but I worked with Molly Shannon. I was Molly Shannon's makeup artist. So I got to do Superstar and, you know, I'm 50. So yeah, but I got to do, you know, makeup for Will, and I met Jimmy Fallon on his, before he even started on the show. I met him at a party. He was so nervous and excited that he was going to be on the show. I mean, I feel like that was so interesting to have that experience, to get to meet these people, especially some of them at these very, very early stages in their careers, and seeing just the kindness that I experienced, or the humbleness that they shared. It really set such an important example for me now that, you know, I have an opportunity, especially with our youngest audiences, on how to stay humble and approachable and positive and share positive energy. You know, it's just so much informed my experience. Although it was in a completely different career, it has fully informed my experience now as an author.
Well, I'm looking forward to what lies ahead for you. And there's two things specifically we're going to be talking about, because it's hard to believe. And by far, I do not push, especially since now I've arrived in San Diego, been out here for 4 months after living in Buffalo for 38 plus years. The month of August will be here sooner than we realize. It will be back to school at that particular point. Here's the intentions where, you know, the festivals return and the concerts return, and we're hugging, we're all loving on one another in a respectful fashion in the way in which we used to before. And so by that point, let's set out the yet for, you know, for August. That sounds like a good time frame, right? Have you seen this book? That's not just like a cute question. That is actually the name of your forthcoming release that is slated for later this year. It sounds like such a super cool name of a book. And like, if I'm like, I want to know more about that. So could you talk to us a little bit more about a little sneak preview of what little ones and the inner child in us in all can enjoy when we read Have You Seen This Book?
Absolutely. Have You Seen This Book kind of comes back to that reluctant reader in me. I wanted to create a moment where kids were laughing throughout the pages of a book, where they created this depth of connection through humor. And ultimately, this book, Have You Seen This Book, is about a boy who has a book that is his most favorite book, but it seems to have gone missing. And so he's going to be asking you throughout, have you seen this book? Of course, you may or may not be holding the very book that he's looking for in your hands.
I've got like a smile on my face and in my heart when I talk about that, because I'm looking forward to the responses that you get from people about this book, because that's also a question. Like, you can say, it's just kind of like a great conversation starter. Like, my new book is called Have You Seen This Book? And they're probably still waiting for you to talk about your book. Like, no, I'm waiting for you to talk to me about your book. Could you tell me about it? No, really, have you seen this book? No, I haven't. It hasn't come out yet. This is kind of like an Abbott and Costello routine, I guess, so to speak. That's like kind of like...
It's very who's on first. Absolutely.
Yes. And then, you know, we had alluded to one of our favorite neighbors, of course, Caldecott, medalist, illustrator, author, Mr. Rogers, fellow Mr. Rogers lover, Matthew Cordell. You just made an announcement, I believe like 3 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, that the two of you are going to be working together on a brand new picture book entitled Where They Once Flew. Now, both of you are fans of birds. Matthew's a great illustrator, not only of Mr. Rogers and Mr. McFeely and everything else neighborhood related, but he also is a big nature guy as well, too. So could you give us a little bit of a sneak peek in terms of what people can expect when that book comes out in a projected release date? As we always like to say on the Children's Book Spotlight series, card is subject to change. It's a little tip of the cap to our old time from in the world of professional wrestling with the wrestling radio show that I hosted for over 10 years in the wrestling industry. They'd always say card is subject to change. So could you let us know also when the time frame of that book is set for release?
So the time frame of Where They Once Flew will hopefully be soaring in fall 2023. One of the great things about being an author, especially an author for children in picture books, is I get to explore so many different facets and interests of myself, and subjects that I'm asking questions about. I was inspired to write a book called Where They Once Flew, because although born in Chicago, I grew up in South Florida. I'm a nature lover, I'm a bird lover, and I had seen a heron on the side of the road, right next to the highway, foraging for food. And it got me thinking about the moments that nature and humans are right up against each other. And what is bringing us closer in many cases is that we are building on their land. We are developing their nesting areas. We are clearing fields and forests. So I wanted to be able to dig in and explore the idea of bird migration and conservation for the youngest audience, to hopefully inspire them to look to the skies and think of ways of how we can support wildlife, and most specifically birds. I was thrilled to see that Matthew Cordell had been doing a series of bird illustrations and the most gorgeous bird photos, because he goes birding almost every day, which you can see on his Instagram account. And I kept seeing all of his drawings of birds that he was doing, and it almost became that I was picturing in my mind a version of a book in which he was illustrating my text. But I had just assumed that he was so busy because, as you mentioned, he is a Caldecott medalist. He has award-winning and best-selling books. I reached out to him on Instagram and asked if this might be something he would be interested in reading. He was kind enough to say that he would, and responded with such a depth of emotion to the manuscript that I had written, and thankfully said that he would love to illustrate the book. And now here we are. When we talk about the magical yet, I actually had Where They Once Flew was only a manuscript, or excuse me, only a title for about 2 years. And then it went without having an illustrator for about 3 years. So in this case, the yet took 5 years to bring me together with Matthew Cordell. And now we have to wait 2 more years for our yet to become our yes, and to see his final illustrations within the book when it's published.
It's very apropos that we're mentioning Matthew, of course, because he did such an amazing job with Hello Neighbor, The Kind and Caring World of Mr. Rogers, which was such a fantastic release that came out last year. And that leads us into one of our favorite segments on the program here on the Children's Book Spotlight Series, where we give a little tip of the cap to our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers. You know, most people will remember, if you're a fan of Mr. Rogers, or you're a fan of the Daytime Emmy Awards, right before Mr. Rogers passed, he had a very moving acceptance speech when he received his Lifetime Achievement Award. And he also shared this message in several college commencement speeches and other talks that maybe people aren't necessarily aware of. He always wanted us to take the time, and he always kept the universal time, to remember those who loved us into being. Because there are, I always like to classify angels that come across our path, that maybe they see something in us before we see it in ourselves. It can simply just be we're having a bad day and someone's there to lift our spirits. It can literally be where someone comes onto the trajectory of our life to really save our life, so to speak. So we always like to take the time, just as Mr. Rogers did, in our own way, in our own light here on the Children's Book Spotlight Series, to remember those who helped love us into being. You've had many people between your husband, your family, your colleagues, your publishers, the kids. You've had many people that have been there to help and support you. Who are some of those people specifically that you would like to acknowledge and mention here on episode number 108 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series that helped love you into being, Angela?
Such a nice sentiment, John. Well, as an author, I often reflect on my high school English teacher, Miss Barbara Walters, not the
I was just gonna...
not the daytime interviewer.
I see. Okay.
not Baba Waba. But Barbara Walters, my English teacher from Jupiter High School in Jupiter, Florida, home of Burt Reynolds. That was our big claim to fame as an 80s kid. But I remember we were writing poetry in her class. This was long, long before I knew I ever wanted to be an author. And we had to go and find an item at home and kind of ruminate on it and write a poem inspired by it. Well, I wasn't feeling very authorly. I didn't think I had a way with words. So I went home and sarcastically, because I was class clown, full disclosure, thought I would choose the most simple and trite of objects to write about. And there was a vase with a red rose in it sitting on our table. And I thought, oh, I'm going to write a poem called Ode to a Rose. It doesn't get much more cheesy than that. This is hilarious. So I went home and I looked at the rose and I sat down with my pen and paper and I started reflecting on the shape of the rose and the velvety quality of the petals and the depth of the color and the shape and the love and sentiment that went behind someone giving someone that rose. And I started writing a poem called Ode to a Rose. And I turned it in very nervous and afraid. And the next day, Miss Walter handed everyone back their poems with their grades on it. And I didn't receive mine. And she called my name and called me up to her desk. And I was like, well, I know I'm busted now. She is going to see that I was just mocking the assignment that she gave us. Well, she called me up and she said, Angela, this is a beautifully written poem. I think you've got quite a way with words, a beautiful way with rhyme. You have so eloquently described the beauty of a rose, and I think you should keep writing. I have to say in that moment, I dismissed her words because I thought I didn't really, it was difficult, as you said in the beginning, sometimes it's difficult to hear those words, those compliments, those kindnesses, if you don't believe them or see them within yourself. And so now, 35 years later, I now reflect very regularly on those words that she shared with me and the support that she showed me and the guidance that she showed me in that moment. So I have many, many, many people who loved me into being, but I would say from a writer's perspective, for me personally, Miss Barbara Walters loved me into being a writer.
That's so beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing that. I think it's a matter of someone that always comes to mind on mine and things. You know, we're talking about English teachers. I remember my first college professor, Zan Robinson. Great first name. Like his name is Zan. It's an awesome first name.
That's a great name.
You know, I remember, you know, going to Buffalo State College, which is part of the SUNY school system, the SUNY educational system in the New York area. Some people know, like, there's SUNY Oswego, SUNY Rochester, SUNY Fredonia. And so, you know, it was English 101 and it, you know, first class that I had. And it's interesting because he was the closest professor that I had. I'm very glad to have called him a friend and a colleague as well. And he's since passed. I know that he established a close rapport with my mother, when she went back to school as well too. So I know that he helped love her into being. And it's interesting too, because my friend who I haven't even mentioned in some time, James Magooter, also a great last name, like
another great name,
like Zan and Magooter, right? And so I had a long friendship with Jim, and he sat right in front of me in English 101. So it's so interesting, like, you know, your first, it's like, you know, okay, you're going from high school. I still remember, like, there were times where, you know, seniors that graduated the first couple of months after graduating, they'd find themselves back at high school, but they would be referred to as the eternal seniors because, like, they didn't want to leave. They still just missed high school. But it was just so nice, you know, back then. And even just, you know, I'd like to mention another person who's since moved out of the San Diego area, but he's a great children's author. His name is Kevin Kirk, kind of like Captain Kirk from, you know, Star Trek. And he has this wonderful non-for-profit, which is actually inspired by his late brother who I believe, I think he had committed suicide if I'm not mistaken, but there's this service dog that's involved, and it's just such a beautiful project. And he was one of, when I moved into my residence here in San Diego, and I had this little mini U-Haul, but it had all my stuff inside of it. And I'm like, how am I going to get all this stuff up the steps? It would have taken hours. And he was the first person that I saw. He was there, and there was like 4 or 5 of his friends. And they says, can we help you bring the stuff from your U-Haul into your apartment? And it's just like, so, you know, just another reminder to all of our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, that everything always has a way of working itself out. And as we conclude our trolley stop here, we always close out with, we go from a little tip of the cap to Fred Rogers, to a little tip of the cap to our favorite genie. Of course, we're referring to the genie from the lamp and one of the most beautiful Disney classics, Aladdin. So you might be wondering, do you have a genie lamp in your office? The answer is yes, I do, Angela. Yes, I do. This is the time where we have a little segment called 3 Wishes. I really feel that as human beings, as souls, as angels on one another's path, that we help one another bring heartfelt wishes and dreams and desires to fruition, because we can't do everything that we came here to do without the help and support of other people. So Angela, you have given from your heart to children, parents, families, educators, your family, many others. So you're being gifted 3 wishes here today. Now this is interesting because I always, you know, people who are interviewed on the program, they're like, okay, so I'm going to be interviewed by John. It's like they look at their calendar, they look at the day, interview with John. And then at the end, they're like, oh, wow, I get 3 wishes on top of that, right? So you're being gifted 3 wishes. They can be for yourself, for your husband, for your family, for the children, for the planet. Some people wish for world peace. Some people ask for an end to COVID. Some people just, you know, they'll find a little sweet spot in between, so to speak. So what would those wishes be that you would like to share with us as we close out our time together today?
3 wishes. I mean, that's powerful. 3 wishes. Well, I have to say, as you were speaking, my first wish actually is for you. And my first wish is that you get to find little Forrest.
Aww.
Very soon. And I do feel that you will be finding little Forrest very soon.
I feel that it's interesting because I don't know if Forrest, I've always envisioned Forrest being a he, but I'm not necessarily sure Forrest will be a she, because I'm not sure if the hybrid of the Shih Tzu Maltese is just a feminine breed or if it's a masculine. So whatever little Forrest looks like, I trust that like the person who has the dog it'll all come to me.
I think so. Well, first of all, I feel like it's like Miss Cleo's psychic reading. I feel like Forrest is going to be a he, and you're going to find Forrest fairly soon. I have to say that. I feel like Forrest is going to be coming into your life very soon, and that is my wish for you.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind.
And I say this too because I'm a huge dog lover. I have 2 rescue dogs myself, one being our dog Pippin and our other dog Mimi. So I know how much it means to have, you know, especially right now during these challenging times, you know, physically, emotionally, to be, and by the way, I love your mug.
Care Bears, you can't beat
Care Bear stare. Yep. So I feel like that love is going to be coming into your life very soon with little Forrest. So, and I'm wishing that for you, that it's very soon. I've been thinking a lot about my daughter lately, and as I mentioned, she's 13 years old. I'm thinking about a world in which she feels loved. I wish for her that she always feels loved in this world, and that she carries the love that Tony and I have for her throughout her entire life. Because I feel that if we feel loved, then we feel empowered and hopeful, and we feel better about ourselves, like all the things we've been saying. So my hope for her and my wish for her is that she always carries and feels that love that we have bestowed upon her. And Gosh, I mean, there's so many, it's like there's so many big things to wish for. I wish for health for everyone. If I could close my eyes and take all of this away, I just wish that we could all have our health in this life, because I think, especially now, we have realized the importance of it now more than ever.
Agreed. Those are three beautiful wishes. I think this is the first time that I've been, doing the program over the past 2 years, since we haven't been doing the 3 wishes segment for the full 2 years, but pretty darn close to it. And I've never had anyone wish something for me, to the best of my knowledge. So I'm just very, I think this might be an homage to SNL's Mike Myers Coffee Talk segment, where Linda Richards would say, "I'm getting overclamped," so to speak. So that's it. That was my earliest introduction to SNL, which was the Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, Kevin Nealon, that's news to me, Weekend Update years kind of thing. So raise your hand if you have had such fun on episode number 108 of the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight Series. This has been such a magical trolley stop, sharing the magical yet, which once again, it is now available at your favorite bookstores across the country and around the world. You can also head on over to Angela's official website, DiTerlizzi.com. You can stay connected with her via her social media platforms as well, on Facebook and Instagram, which we've enclosed in the description below. You can also head on over to Amazon.com if that is your online book purchasing vehicle of choice. And you can leave a 5-star review for the magical yet if you feel guided to do so. If this message again has brought, I feel that it's brought hope into my life even more so. If it's brought hope, healing, love, joy, compassion, if it's even brought some miracles into your life, if you feel thus as the result of that, that your little one is now beginning to experience those exact same things as well too, in their own way, in their own light. If you feel that this message needs to be shared with someone in need, that someone needs to hear that they're magical yet is just around the corner, so to speak, we encourage you to subscribe to Empowered Publicity's official YouTube channel, to share episode number 108 of the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight Series, and to share the message of the magical yet. If you are a children's author, if you are a children's illustrator, and you would like to become a member of the Empowered Publicity family and share your inspiring story and the release of your brand new children's book on the Children's Book Spotlight Series, you can connect with us via our official website, empoweredpublicity.com, or you can connect with us via any one of our social media platforms that you now see on screen, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Of course, if you would like to have us share your brand new children's book on the all-new season of Storytime with Mr. John, the same website and social media, same social media sites apply as well perfectly. You can connect with us via our official website at empoweredpublicity.com or via our social media platforms that you see on screen. We do want to give such a big air hug as well to our friends and neighbors at CBS 8 CW San Diego here in the beautiful city of San Diego for all of their support in helping us share the newest and most joyful thing that we've been able to gift to the children, not only here of San Diego, but to children around the world. And that is the Empowering Reads for Kids, the brand new segment where myself and Laura Kavanaugh, each and every Wednesday on CW San Diego Living, we dive into the pages of the brand new heartfelt children's books and the shining stars in the kidlit community. If you would like more information on the Empowering Reads for Kids and to be able to have Laura and myself feature your book on CBS 8 CW San Diego, again, you can also connect with us via our official website and social media platforms that you see on screen. We want to, of course, as I hear the trolley, and it's no joke, by the way, Angela, because I literally live next door to the San Diego trolley. So like I'll hear the trolley several times during the course of the day. So it ain't just like a little tip of the cap again to Mr. Rogers, but when we hear that trolley, we know that it's time to go. Mr. Rogers, of course, he reminded us for the years that he walked this earthly plane 143. Somehow he weighed that weight his entire natural adult life. He must have had like the secret, like Ponce de Leon did to the fountain of youth. 143 meant that I love you, but of course here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series, we like to say 243. 2 letters in love, 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. And of course, Auntie Angela was very kind enough to give us some of her time here today. Of course, we remind all of you that you are perfect, you are whole, you are healthy, you are complete, that you are loved, that you are special, just the way that you are. that we like you just the way that you are. So again, yes, I do hear the trolley. This has been episode number 108 of the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight series. Episode number 109 is also just around the corner. I feel that's going to be a magical yet coming true in and of itself as well too. So again, we want to thank all of you for your continued support of Empowered Publicity and for the Children's Book Spotlight series, for supporting all of the gifted and amazing children's authors and illustrators around the world who are doing such wonderful work right now for children, especially this particular time. And above all else, we want to thank all of you, our friends, our neighbors, our listeners and viewers, and our fellow shining stars for helping to walk home the children of the world. So for Angela DiTerlizzi, for myself, John Masiulionis, thank you so much for spending some time with us here on episode number 108 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. And we look forward to reconnecting with all of you once again very soon. From our hearts to yours, have a beautiful day, a beautiful week. And we'll see all of you once again very soon. Take care.